Call the meeting in order. The agenda, Oromocto Council and Committee meeting, Tuesday, the 21st of January, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. I'll call the meeting in order and call for a mover for approval of the agenda. Deputy Mayor Maloney, seconder, Councillor Kirkbride. Questions? All in favor? Contrary, motion carried. Move down to presentations. We'll start with 3A, the Oromocto Community Wellness and Recreation Center Financial Plan. We'll start with the CEO, and you've got the floor.
All right, thank you. So here we are, I guess, as we've talked about for the last few months, just getting to a point where we've got a fork in the road and we've got a decision to make. And so this presentation is further to the update that was given to you last month by Colliers, and hopefully fills in some of the gaps, and as well as helps you know, the community understand better how we go about actually, you know, achieving this without talking about big scary numbers. So really what we're doing tonight from the scope is just looking through several areas in terms of the background, some of the success criteria, what's the goal, what are those factors, the potential partner funding sources, obviously some communication strategies for you folks as this gets out and about. What our current debt load is and understanding that, and then just some of the decisions that's needed to move forward. So starting with the background, luckily mostly everybody in this room is pretty familiar, and because they've been here that long. So, you know, started talking about this project in 2012. So we're talking 12 plus years now. Because there was a need, and some of those feasibility studies to the bullet at the bottom of the slide were done, one in 2014 and then updated again in 2020, which again expressed the need for you know, some of these facilities to be updated, upgraded, that sort of thing. Of course, everybody knows most of our recreation and cultural facilities were all built near about the same time and have either passed their life expectancy or are on their last legs. And of course, the list there, as everybody knows, the library, 67 years old. These are high level numbers from a few years back, and those numbers represent just what it would take to keep it repaired and operational. That's not making it better than what it is now. It's just fixing roofs, you know, plugging holes, re-insulating, you know, new flooring, you know, all that kind of stuff. So King's Arrow, again, 58 years, just to keep things running as it is now, 310,000 plus. The community center, 56 years, another 235. Arts and learning, the reason that's in a different color that goes with for past is because we've all made that decision that it's clearly past its lifespan. But if we were to try to get it back to what it was, it'd be, you know, over $200,000 just to repair. So taking all that into account for planning purposes and repairs alone, if we just decide, you know what, we're gonna fix what we have, you're still into the millions of dollars to the tune of 1.4. That just gets you old buildings. Nothing fancy, nothing new, just functional. So there is an ability there in terms of the approximate market value that we've had some research done to suggest that if we sold all those properties, you know, for what we've had appraisals done, you could net us somewhere in the $2.2 million range. So that's the background. How do we make this successful? So some of the criteria that we need to speak to as we go along. Obviously, the new vision is multi-purpose. We need everybody to see themselves in the building. It isn't just a rink. It isn't just a library, but it's all kinds of things. We need to make it affordable for folks in terms of not only the cost in terms of tax rate, but also just in programming and fees and stuff like that. Sustainable obviously lends to our ability to make sure that it's efficient to try to help in that regard. Obviously, new things help grow communities. People like new shiny things. It attracts people to the area, including businesses, and that's a key too. Obviously, we know we need partnerships across all levels of government, which is key to this success, and we'll see that in further slides. We want to look at this over the next 50 or 60 years, and so that's sometimes always difficult to do, but in the planning phase, you want to consider what's life look like 50 and 60 years from now, so that we can try to make sure that we build some flexibility, which is the next point into that. So to make sure we can keep it's a large investment, so you don't want that building to be irrelevant in 10 or 15 years time, because that just wouldn't be worth the investment. Green building, again, environmentally friendly, and of course, naturally, we want to make the least amount of impact on the tax rate as possible. So those are the keys. In terms of the goal and the end state, really, again, we want to have affordability, sustainability, multi-purpose, all ages, and that also plays a part in some of the local governments and the First Nations, to which, you know, we hope that people see value in that from those areas. You know, realistically, this is a building we want a place for everyone in the region. So not just our citizens here, but let's face it, in New Brunswick, you can't have these types of facilities in every neighboring community. We have the ability to do this. We hope that our neighboring communities will buy in and see value in it as well. You know, it's a place for us that we see would unite a broader community. There, you know, there'll be opportunities for younger folks, for example, so they got some healthy outlet for their energy, which helps keep people from doing nefarious things outside buildings and keeping them inside doing active things that hopefully keeps them out of trouble. Obviously, older adults, you know, there can be a place for community in these places. We've often talked about the loss of the interior mall space, which was a place of community for a lot of older folks. Well, we can achieve that back in this concept as well. So that's something, and you know, because isolation and loneliness on a day like today when it's -20 out is real. We will have people in our communities that won't leave their homes because of that. But if there was a facility they could go and meet each other and go for a walk and then have a coffee after, then that might be something they'd be, you know, wanting to do. Of course, you know, we'll aim to improve overall health of the region with all these things, because, you know, connection, socialization, well-being, whether it be physical or mental health, is all important, which can also lead to some of our issues we have with our healthcare system itself. So there are, you know, positive things that can happen from doing a facility such as we're proposing. And again, we just want to have a place to allow the public to come together and create new opportunities and, quite frankly, try new things. And this concept, while it sounds new here, isn't really new in the world, but you know, if I can convince a avid reader that, you know, that looks interesting and they're speed skating on the ice at that time, then that might be something that they would have never thought to do, because I have spoken to a lot of people who go to the library often, and we have a lot of people that do that, but have never ever set foot at the King's Arrow Arena, and vice versa. I've got people who go to the King's Arrow Arena every day and never set foot in a library, and so there can also be, you know, benefits to having some of those things in the same area. So that's the goal, that's the criteria in the end state that we want to promote to people, so that they understand it's not just one thing or another, because we'll all hear it, well, I don't play hockey, I don't read, I don't, you know, I mean, it's one of those things where we're hoping that by virtue of having a lot of these things together, that people will see themselves in it. And by read doesn't mean you don't know how to read, it just means that you don't perhaps share that same love of reading. So what are some of those factors to that success? Well, obviously, we know we need to have some partners in this. It won't be the town alone. We need to assure that folks who pay their taxes here in town understand that. So that can be on some means, private sector sponsorships, donation, fundraising, that'll be part of the puzzle. The surrounding local governments will be part of the puzzle, and we'll speak to this a bit more in some of the other slides, but Arcadia, Sunbury, York South, and a portion of the Capital Region Rural District, which are like Burton, Geary, Sheffield, Majorville areas, you know, they account for over 51% of our catchment users. So they need to be seen as being a shared part of this vision. And that is the spirit of local governance reform, and we will work with the capital region as well as those local governments directly to share that message. Diverse divestment opportunities, we just talked about sale of old buildings, so there's some opportunity there. The communication strategy is important, and I've used this simply to try to help develop a bit of a coined phrase, if you will, but it certainly resonates in my mind, which is if you don't invest in something new, you won't grow your community. And if you don't grow your community, then you continue to raise taxes to offset the increasing costs. And if you keep raising the tax rates, then you don't grow your community. So it becomes a vicious circle that we need to at some point break out and break away from. And I think this is the project that we can help that happen. The design scenario right now, that's key. So we talk about that tonight. It's time to commit to a clear way forward for funding and proper project management, so that we know, as staff know what you want to fund for and what you want to design for, so that we can make sure we're on the right track. Of course, the town commitment from 21 September 2023 was 17.5 million, and that impact to the tax rate is built into our 5-year capital plan. So we are not looking to add more to that at this point, and we feel like that's an appropriate amount for the town to commit to and still make this happen, and we'll see that here in future slides. So to point out the potential partners again, joint agreements. So joint agreements for, you know, with the province, with the federal governments, and with surrounding local governments. That's important. If we can get the bilateral agreements agreed to, which we will endeavor to do, then, you know, at 2/3 the cost, we're hoping to come up with 60 million of that through those two portions of government. The surrounding local governments, in our minds, we need them to come to the table, as their residents are assuming 51.25% of the uses of our facilities. So really looking for about $11 million, and how do we do that? And that can be achieved, and we'll talk about this with other local governments moving forward, if we could consider it in the form of a surcharge, or I'll call it a membership. So every property in those areas would have C on their tax bill annually, a $76.86 surcharge. And I'd be quite happy to tell them exactly what it's for. But my reasoning behind that is, if you went to get an annual membership anywhere, and I don't care what group you're part of, if they said your annual membership was $76, and as a result, you can come to this facility and not pay any other additional out of town user fees, I would hope that most people would see that as reasonable. If we could achieve that, then we will net the $11 million from those groups. So we've got to talk to them more about that, get them to understand that, and deliver that message in a way that's not seen as a general tax rate increase. And that's something that we're committed to doing. Some of the other federal funding programs that we're working with right now, and we do see a pathway forward to the tune hopefully of 1.5+ million is through FCM. So the Federation of Municipalities, Canadian Municipalities, has lots of programs. We feel that we can get some money through those programs as well. Then get into the business community and naming and advertisement. And our goal there will be about 2+ million over the course of the next 4 years, for example, as we move forward. There is some funding support that could be gathered in addition through federal programs, through Indigenous Service Canada with OFN's involvement. We hope to be able to do that. Reached out and had some very brief touch points with them. So that's also in there. And then of course, again, the divestment of old infrastructure. So when you look at all those bolded numbers at the end, and total add up, it's about 78.7 million. Yeah, our 17.5 that we've committed, and total that give you about 96.2 million. So we've heard from Colliers already, they'd like to apply as if the building was 9-1. So there's a little bit of fudge factor in there already, if you will, to help ease if there is some surprises or some increases. But at the same time, we're hopeful that the project will actually come in less than that. So again, getting to this slide, that's how we try to boil it down for folks so they understand that the real commitment from the town is still that 17.5 million.
Thank you, Richard. Just because this is germane at this point with the funding, because the bulk of the funding would come from federal and provincial governments, with the absence of that funding, it really does not become a very easy or financially feasible project to do on behalf of our citizens. So of course, there's a lot of planning that has to go on behind the scenes, but before you start going out for the 11 million and this and that, and all these other smaller amounts, which of course add up to that 90, I guess what I'm looking for is process. Like, what is the process by which you unfold all of this money? Do you go and put the vast majority of your efforts into solidifying those two major pots first? And then if you're able to get that, then it makes sense to put your time and investment into the others? Or do you go at it all at the same time and see how much rolls in when?
Yeah, so here, what we would have to do is, and where we're trying to lead to tonight, is we need to commit to a concept so we can start spending some money on design, because that design will lead us to be able to fill out broader detail for joint agreements and funding packages. So we've got to at least get to that part with the full knowledge that if we can't hit our funding targets, we will not tender anything until such time as we know we have the bulk of these targets met. So other examples of funding sources, just, so yeah, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, green municipal funds, they're out there that we're going after. So there's funding anywhere between 200,000 and 1.5 million. Of course, green inclusive community buildings is another program that we expect there will be another round sometime, maybe 26, just due to federal government, uncertainty, but we'll be prepared, and some of those applications will range anywhere from 3 to 25 million. And so there's definitely some opportunity there. Of course, community-based fundraising, we will start to embark on exploring community events, corporate partnerships, additional avenues to bridge future or any remaining needs. And so some of that we'll talk about as we start to develop a package, which is in front of you tonight as well, for draft purposes. And again, divestment opportunities of our old buildings. So communication strategy, really where we're at there is we need everybody to see themselves in this facility. So again, it's not just one thing, but it can be a host of many things. And hopefully in speaking to people, there's something in there that they see value in. Talking about modest tax increases, which were already outlined in our 5-year financial plan. And so it's built in there already. We're on year 2 of 5 of that plan. We're progressing through it. As long as people see fit in what we're doing so far, then we can achieve that same goal as we always set out to do from a town perspective. It doesn't consider what fiscal reform might bring us, and we're hoping that's positive, right? That we're hoping that fiscal reform might bring back some of the money we see that currently goes out the door that we fund for, and be able to keep it within town. If it does, then that helps ease some of that mill rate increase pressure from our perspective. Again, the lifespan of the current facilities is pretty much done. We really don't have a lot of choice here. We got to do something, and we got to start moving forward on it, because it's a big project. Or we've got to start putting the money into the existing buildings that we have been kind of, I won't say letting go, but we've been aware that we don't want to invest, $300,000 in a roof on the library if we're simply going to get rid of it 2 years or 3 years from now. So those are things that we, need to consider as part of this. And again, this is a partnership. It won't move forward without it being a partnership. So there's not a risk on that end if we can't get the buy-in from the multi-level of governments. We simply won't be able to move forward. So we won't do it without their partnership, that's for sure. And we don't want people to think that we're damming the torpedoes and going ahead anyway, because we know we can't bear that cost alone. And so we won't even try to pretend that we will. So again, there's that vicious circle, so to speak, and that's just in graphics. Again, if you can't grow your community, there leads to other things, which just keeps you spinning around and around, and you can never get away from it. Consider it like a kitchen sink drain in the middle of those circles, and the water swirls and swirls, but it's never going to get away. It's just going to keep going down the pipe. so we need to make sure people are aware of that. Because, you know, some people will say, well, I don't think we should be doing new buildings right now. I mean, it's too expensive, but here, this should hopefully allow people to know, yes, I know it's expensive, but if we don't want to invest in our community, what are we telling people? You know, you know, nothing's gonna get newer, nothing's gonna get cheaper. So we need to think about that for those folks who feel like this is an unnecessary expense. So the communication strategy on the ice pads, again, we know we've talked a lot about this with you know, folks and ice users and programs that do that. So obviously, we know the facts are the town of Oromocto has 2 indoor ice surfaces. Yes, we only have full control and own one. You know, so we've got the King's Arrow, but the Soldiers Arena is in town, which is a bit unique because most towns our size do not have 2 ice surfaces within their local boundaries. So that's something we need to be mindful of and try to exploit a little better as we move forward. Obviously, we know that King's Arrow serves both local and regional. We spoke to that 51.25%, which comes from outside our PAN catchment, which is PAN's attached to a property. So it's not about how many people. It's just simply if you own a property in that area, then you have a PAN attached. So again, there's about 24, just a little over 24,000 residents within that catchment area, of which 11,910 belong to the town of Oromocto. If you use that ratio of 1 ice pad per 12,000, then we ourselves as a town are already meeting that ratio of having an appropriate amount of availability of ice to our citizens. That being said, we know that we have an issue when it comes to people who live outside of town because they put more pressure on us to provide more ice than we have for folks inside. So that's where that 3rd bullet, if you really looked at it from our catchment area, so that includes people that are coming from the Gagetown area, that are coming from the Russian Orange Wallace area, that are coming from Burton Geary area, to use our ice facilities are causing the demand that we certainly can't keep up with, and there's no doubt there. However, we need them to understand that so that they see value in investing in our facility. And so we've got to come up with a way to make sure that the minor groups understand this, because when they come in and say we need 2 ice surfaces, they're not wrong. But the Oromocto Hockey Association is not just Oromocto, and it takes in a much broader community for which we need those people to say, yeah, you know what, you're right, that's where our pain is in not having enough availability, and we need them to be part of the solution. So again, there's a $200 non-resident fee currently. Obviously, you know, we can go and say we can apply higher non-user fees. But I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of that because I feel like both sides lose. One is I'll never be able to charge an individual what it would actually cost to run a new facility. And I'll do my best to make it as high as I can, but if we talked about probably looking in the vicinity of $1,200 per user, if you had a family of 3 living in Geary, that's $3,600 of user fees versus as my proposal earlier, if you have a family of 3 and you have a pan, only one, and you're prepared to pay your $76, then that'll give you the same entry. So these are the types of things that we want to talk to the other groups about. Because that seems fair, that's what tax systems are for, to spread it out so that it doesn't make it cost prohibitive to just users, although it's not as easy to explain to folks, but that's how we think we can meet that impact. So when it comes to that ice pad, I mean, really, if we're able to do that, that's $76.86, then that would pull in about $11 million that we can use for helping in the construction of this facility. If they wanted to talk about a 2-pad right now, it's just not it's not feasible monetarily unless they want to come up with their 51% of the second service. I can tell you right now that'll be prohibitive to those municipalities because they won't have, an additional, $17-18 million in the bank to go. But if they did, I'd be more than willing to look at that. It's just right now, it's probably not realistic. So the best thing we can hope for is that they see value in a new facility with one ice pad. But in that spirit of looking forward and growth, because looking at the next 50-60 years is we're absolutely going to design this so that there is an accommodation for a future second ice pad. That will be part of the plan. There will be space on the site in order to do it. And we would absolutely commit to that because we think that's a good idea in terms of the total lifespan as well. Because someday my hope is we do grow enough that we can monetarily sustain adding a second ice service on. It's just not today. So again, going forward actions on that strategy, we've got to talk about that sub-regional capital and operational formula, which I kind of mentioned. We're trying to come up with perhaps a surcharge or a membership fee, if you like to call it, that's keeping, we've got to work collectively with those municipalities to identify other funding sources to make this work. We've got to have them see themselves within it. We want to work with the greater Fredericton region as well to establish an equitable indoor ice delivery model for the whole area, because I have some more data that shows that the greater Fredericton area is sorely lacking in ice services compared to their users. But it's not our problem. It's not just Oromocto's problem. It's the whole region, and they've got to play a part in that and not keep saying, well, build 2 and we'll come. Well, yeah, that's great. If the money tree out the back would allow it, I would do it. But the reality is that's just not the case. So we want to try to work with more broadly speaking, the region to see if there's an ability to free up, because we understand that there's pressure on our groups to find more ice time in the region. We want to try to work with them as well to develop a more consistent approach to cost an hour of ice time, so we don't get into this competition, if you will, about who has a better rate. Really, if we're comparing apples to apples, we should all be within a close approximation so that, and I say this because I do feel everybody wants to be on that page. Really, nobody likes people who are kicking tires and shopping around, committing to a time here and then canceling there. I mean, again, if you're all within an approximate range, then we sometimes avoid some of those logistical issues as well. Again, we'll work with the Pan area to develop a shared operational cost model moving forward that keeps everybody, so it's not just about the initial capital cost, but the operational cost moving forward. Planning staff will look at residential development that helps additional property tax revenues. Again, if you build it and commit to growing, then the community grows because there's something they want to be there for. So we've seen that work in other areas where they built new facilities, and as a result have seen additional population growth. So there's no reason to believe that can't happen here. And again, we'll work with the base to, in the short term, find programming of non-base used ice times. And I've already started that dialogue and they are committed. We've just got to be concerted about what that ask is and hammer it out. So we give them an appropriate amount of time to be able to run that message back down through the chain prior to next September. So that means we're starting in April and having those discussions so that it can be in place instead of waiting till August, in which they unfortunately can't react that quickly. So we're gonna make sure we support the idea that we need to help some of our minor area groups with finding some ice times in those peak times, and we can do that and not necessarily need to build a second ice pad just yet. So a little bit about our current debt load, so people understand, especially those out in the public. Our debt load is regulated by the province through a ratio imposed by the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board. And that board's there so that communities who may not know what they're doing don't overextend themselves and therefore need to be bailed out because they have borrowed more money than they can afford to borrow. So there is a safety valve there in that form. So based on that ratio, I mean, the town has the capacity to service, or any town, any municipality, 20% of their operating budget. So for us, that's 5.7 million. So what that means is I could borrow 5.7 million to service the debt. That doesn't necessarily, so really, if you take that, and our debt service rate now is forecast for 25. This is after picking up 2 fire trucks too. Will be about 1.4 million. So that puts us at 5% of our capacity. We have a capacity to borrow up to 50 million. So really, that leaves us with a lot of room. I don't want people to think that by virtue of borrowing 17.5 million is going to put us at a brink or not allow us to borrow any more money for anything else in our 5-year plan. So, which includes much more than just this. We've included repayment costs on this project and other things like new lagoon system for Oromocto West capacity. Some of the capital projects you'll see through engineering public work this year. And so we've got a target to borrow up to 28 million. So we're not even halfway to our maximum capacity, including the 17.5. So I want people to know we're nowhere near the brink. We're nowhere near stretched out to the point where this is impossible. So hopefully that helps debunk some of the borrowing myths that are out there. So where are we with decisions? Well, there's really 3 scenarios in our minds. There's the full build decision, so that's the one we've been talking about here over the last few months, the one you've seen from Collier's, that vision of that multi-purpose facility. We think we can make that happen with the already committed 17.5 million as part of our pot. And we would really like to move forward on that scenario. But there's also scenario 2, a phase build. That is a scenario. It probably most likely looks like, you know, again, the ice surface, the arena, library, community space, but you'd hold on the gymnasium and the clinic space. It's, what I'll say about phase scenarios is, if our vision is the full build, in the end, it will save us no money. And so I'll use the example of just down the road in Fredericton. They originally had a concept of 4 ice surfaces all in one location. It was supposed to be in the location where Willie O'Ree is currently, for those who know where that is, on the north side. It was gonna be a $30 million build in 2006. They talked about it, they thought, gosh, I don't know, plus they had some, you know, wanted to kind of have a couple different pads on each side. They said, let's phase it. So they did, they broke it into 2 phases. The first phase, which we all know is Willie O'Ree now, 2 ice surfaces, was finished in 2006 to the price tag is 16 million. Great, they dropped the original price from 30 to 16. That could be seen as a savings. The second 2 ice surfaces that came along in 2012, Grant Harvey, the final price tag on those was 31. So in total, they got their 4 ice surfaces for a total of $47 million instead of the original price of 30. So you can see in that example alone that while it might seem like a good idea to phase construction in and phase build, if your goal is to see that scenario through, you will always pay more if you phase it. So to the scenario 2, that's why it's not as favorable as just going after scenario 1. However, it is certainly something we can consider. And then of course, scenario 3, which is always on the table, is just the status quo. Talk about that. It's not a great scenario, but it's certainly one that we can deal with should that be the ultimate direction forward. So, is the federal government willing to help fund, the provincial willing to help fund, and is the base interest high now and in the future? We believe all these questions should be a yes. And so from that, in order to make sure we push it over the edge and yes, the big thing there is we need folks such as yourselves to be out there telling people we need to make this happen. And, you know, there could be dire consequences down the road if it doesn't, you know, from building failures to just people not wanting to invest to live in our area and go somewhere else. Those are all things that could potentially happen. So we feel like we should recommend council move forward with scenario 1 and the full build and the multi-purpose facility with the arena, the library, the community space, the gymnasium, concession space, and community healthcare center. Because we want to be able to at least commit to developing that design and preparing an application for funding based on that scenario. And have that ready and be able to give clear direction to move forward in that vein. And again, I will say, if this becomes a recommendation, we will certainly have stop gaps where we won't tender a project, even if we get the design build, until we know we have the appropriate funding in place to the questioner. So that is where we're at with the next steps, which is just to get your consensus on that recommendation. We'll create some letters of support and brochures, which we'll briefly talk about here right after. We'll brief surrounding local governments, what we'd like to do, including the Minister of Local Government, which I've already had some chats with already, but I'd like to be able to produce something more robust. Again, we can brief the ISC and NPI as well and try to garner support on the federal side. chamber hold some town hall meetings as part of the process to inform people what we're doing. Capital Service Commission again, and again, for anyone to be vocal and supportive to anybody who will listen, because the more people who will listen and support the cause, then the more likelihood of success. So brings me to the end. I'm hoping we can gain a consensus from this, and if there are any questions, I'd be glad to take them, your worship.
Questions, council? Council Carr?
I think we're good. I think I've always been supportive of doing it all at once, but I am curious on scenario 2, there's no cost of what we would save holding off. I know you said it's more expensive in the end, but there's no cost given. So what are we saving in the initial? I know in the long run, you're saying it's not a saving.
Right.
But in that initial bill, what are we saving by taking out a multi-purpose and clinic space? And do we have a perceived amount of what the clinic space would bring in per month if it was fully rented by professionals? So that would tell me how much we're offsetting that cost. So just, it's hard to make a decision when I have a cost for number 1, which we want, which you're telling me we want, but I don't have a cost for the other 2. So it helps me make an informed decision if I have it. I don't have it there.
Yeah, no, so I can tell you approximately, because again,
Yeah.
the numbers at this point are based on some Class D estimates based on cost per square foot. So if we were to strip simply the square footage of those 2 areas out, you know, we're probably somewhere in the range of 56 to 62 million. Now,
Left to do, that's the cost of, I'll say, if we chose phase 2, step
Right,
1.
exactly. The one thing I will say about the clinic space is it's the only space that's probably financially self-sustainable, because what I can build it for, I can turn around and lease it and pay the debt service based on the lease costs. So, you know, that one's kind of like mathematically, yes, but
Right.
you know, it's the only one I can guarantee that I can get my money back out of from a business case point of view, which is fine, because the rest of it's more recreational in nature, and nobody in Canada builds a recreational facility to make fun, because that's not part of the business plan per se.
And part of the reason I bring that up is we know that the town, not the town, but within the town will be building new schools, which come with gymnasiums.
Right.
And I know the current model for use of the gymnasium that for hours was one way, but the future model might look different. So a multi-purpose facility,
There'll be lots of gymnasiums, so.
I was just gonna say,
there may be the facility itself will be nicer or maybe larger. So I don't know demand, and I just don't know demand. So I'm just trying to go through the scenarios in my head, again, cost and all the different potentials. I know they're all what ifs, but
They are, I guess, and to that point in our discussions we've had prior, is we see the community gym space being more of a place for people to recreate and not so much programming, although there can be some. And to your point, yes, new schools will have new gyms, which should be bigger and brighter, but our issue we have, which I don't see alleviating, is access, because it's controlled through the province and the school districts, and so you have a snow day, you can't get in, and maybe everything's cleared up and you wanna have a recreation program, you know, it's tough to do that, and you can't control that part, but understanding that we wouldn't be wanting to compete against those larger gymnasiums for events.
thank you.
Councilor Monmouth.
Thank you, worship. I've already mentioned a couple of real small ones. For the best in the old buildings, 2.2 million. I don't have any experiences directly, but my recollection of any town or city that has valued property, it never seems to get sold for what that appraised value is. So concerned about this 2.2 become 1.5. And the other question about the properties, I thought the new fire station would go over the library and the community center is. So how can we do both on one facility?
Yeah, so
That impact the 2.2? I have no problem moving the fire station.
Right. possibly, it depends, so. In that package, what I'll say is, I tried to scope it so that most of the value's in the land. Because knowing the market, nobody's really gonna want to buy the property for the building, so. Is there some risk the market changes? Absolutely, but that being said. We've had professionals look at it from that perspective, and that's. Yes, is there a risk that 2.2 is 1.8? No doubt, no doubt, because the market is whatever somebody's willing to pay. To the point of the fire station, certainly there is a chunk of property where the fire station's located that we would wish to keep, so. The property that runs between the current fire station and the Irving would be something we keep, but we own a lot more property around
Yeah.
it, which we could subdivide off and sell. So, yeah, there could be a risk there that there's a $500,000 difference.
With regards to the planning for the second ice pad. Are our plans including upsizing the current ice plant we're gonna build with one pad, or is it just based on, we're gonna leave space for a second facility?
Both. So when we were doing some of the design charrettes as we would prepare, we're talking to some of the subject matter experts in terms of what kind of size we would need for plants, including, the rooms for these plants and what would be needed for it. So we make sure that the plant was appropriately sized and that everything was designed such that it could be a simple add. Yeah, those are both being considered in the design. Of course, as we get closer in the next round, we can fine tune exactly what those things are. But yes, that's being considered.
So does that include, are we constructing the building differently? If we're adding on to it or not, like there's no extra cost in the building of the building?
No, yeah, the way we would design it is literally, it'd be sort of an addition to, so we don't necessarily have to do any of the initial design much differently. It's kind of like a lot of the new arenas, what you'll see is almost like a mirror. And so we think that's the same concept the designer will consider here is, you develop this design with the idea that you just mirror it over and add on.
That's how the original Multi Coliseum was built. The back end was supposed to be a CFL stadium.
Right, yeah.
And one last one. Do we have a solid commitment for Horizon on the clinic?
A solid commitment yet, no, but they're engaged, we're trying to work through the layers of onion, which are, Horizon or any large, group, but, what I do know is that they're engaged in the fact that they know they need space. They know they can only lease certain space that suits their needs, and so if the space is designed accordingly, then they will most likely be engaged in that space. If they're not, we still have the opportunity to rent it for private, primary healthcare folks, because they're also out there looking around for large.
The only reason I asked the question is, given that this is the same outfit that has temporarily closed the ER or Oromocto for how many years and hasn't found people to go in there yet.
Right,
We rely on them for a supply of doctors,
we do.
so I'm just curious how strong their commitment is to the facility.
Yeah, I mean, I feel much better after the recent government change in the sense that, you know, we have somebody who kind of understands that dynamic and understands that, you know.
Hopefully this could be one of the 20 clinics though.
100%, right?
Thanks.
Councilor Bell?
Thank you, Richard. Mine comes at looking at that 11 million from the surrounding local governments, the 76.86 per household that we would tax.
Yeah.
I think a sell for that would be if we build the full bill. That the residents can see themselves because they need the doctors, right? That a lot of them don't have, and if we don't build that portion, it might be a harder sale to get that 11 million.
It could be, it'll be a little more difficult for sure, but yeah, you know, the interesting part when I was looking through, some of the data that's out there is, you know, how many people from outside of town have a library card. It blows my mind. I mean, it's high,
Yeah.
right? There's more people who own a library card outside of town than they'll ever be playing hockey. Like, just the numbers are crazy, which is good. But it just means they need to see themselves and come to the table and say, hey, you know, you need to help us support building a new facility for those folks. Because they enjoy reading, they enjoy whatever the library offers in terms of programming, so that's something we need to get them engaged in as well.
Any other questions or comments, council? Wow. The next step.
Yeah, well, so really the next step, your worship, is just to try to commit to what you wish staff to do, our recommendations there. We want to move forward with scenario one in the full build, at least to get moving and give Collier's direction to create the request for proposal on a design package, which would then lead us to a full design, which will help develop our funding application. So I'm hoping everybody is leaning towards that, but I'll leave it up to you, your worship, to run them through their paces.
Okay. We need to have a warm and fuzzy. We'll go around the table and we'll all vote on it.
Scenario one.
Okay,
Scenario one.
scenario one. Scenario one. Scenario one. Scenario one. Scenario one. Scenario one. Scenario one. There it is. There's your answer.
Great, your worship, thank you.
All right. Now we'll go through the monthly departmental reports.
Yep.
If I can find it.
I think your worship, we were gonna just quickly go over the community wellness and recreation promotional package, which was given to everyone there. And so just high level, what that is, folks, is moving forward. We want to start engaging a bit in, I'll say a letter writing campaign, if you will, as well as trying to start to go to certain interest groups with a package. So Jackie and her group has been trying to draft something together, and so this is a draft. Please take a review. We think if there's anything in it that you have an aversion to or think we need to change or augment, simply let us know. And if not, we'll, our next phase will be just to spruce this up a little bit more. And then we'll get started on some of the, educational and letter writing camps. So.
I know a while ago that we looked at that LinkedIn name called it, and it's on like the Community Recreation Wellness Center. Are we still sticking with that?
For now, I would say yes, we are, only from the perspective that we do hope that someday we will have a name. But we're still early in that process, and perhaps if somebody comes to us with $3.5 million donation like happened in Fredericton, we
With
might
the arts and
Right, you know, again, there might be an opportunity to attach a name at that point, but for now, we feel like that's the best way to represent what this building is. I know it's a lot of words, but at the same time, to start with that, till such time as there's a more specific name given.
So basically, yeah, this is the concept and we're gonna run with that name for now. And at the time of the build, if you want to break a bottle of champagne on the building, it could be called something else.
Yeah,
Okay, this is what I'll be using.
yeah, no, for sure.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Bishop, and I know that we just got these tonight, so I haven't had a chance to go through it all, but just by doing a very quick skim, I really like the layout and the professionalism put into creating this document. I think once you get documents like this circulating and out into the community, and you start getting them in the hands of the right people, then some of your potential donors, even though sometimes those people that are maybe not even those that you would expect, might step forward and we're looking to give funds to a cause that they believe in. So just whoever did put together this document, it's job very well done.
Councilor Kirkbride?
Thank you, worship. I agree with Council, Deputy Mayor Winnie. It looks really good. Of course, being me, the first thing that I caught my eye, of course, is the layout of the arena. That's not the final plan again.
No,
Okay, just wanted to confirm that with those shared washrooms.
yeah. Yeah, no, certainly not. It's just a concept for sure. Yeah,
Because I know if I show that to people in my world, that's the first thing they're gonna notice too. What is going on?
Councilor Walujo?
Thank you, worship. It's early stages, I know, but just one thing we may want to consider if it helps us going forward, depending on perhaps the Regional Service Commission and regional facilities and the funding formulas. Simple change might be Oromocto Regional Wellness and Recreation Center. If that helps us in the future to get $15 million in the thing. Just, I mean, I think it's a great document, it looks very good, very professional. It's the kind of thing we need to get behind and start selling it.
right. Yeah, no, yeah, duly noted. Certainly, if it's a matter of switching a name around for that kind of money, that's a no-brainer.
I had the Oromocto area, so, and I like the Oromocto regional.
Oromocto community name means Oromocto and the community,
Right,
but if you're outside, this means Oromocto.
right, yeah, yeah.
Okay, any other comments or questions, council? Councilor Kirkbride?
And I meant to ask this the last presentation, CAO, about the, slide go. The town hall meetings, how soon do you foresee those happening? The only thing I ask is that. I know it's not gonna be next week or anything like that, but if something, cause what I'm thinking is because I know. And again, I guess I'm talking about in every one of a lot of our main user groups, whether it's ringette or figure skating or minor hockey, they'll be having their year end. What they call it,
Annual general meeting.
annual general meeting at the end of their seasons, and if we could somehow perhaps, because that's when they're gonna get their most population there. With those user groups, they're usually April, May, just depends on when they can get a facility too to use, and I just thought it might be an idea to hang on to get. Even those out there to some people, and that sort of thing that they're in general meetings.
Yeah, so twofold there. One is, I certainly haven't, it's in my opinion that could be shared with OMHA as early as whenever we spruce it up and finish it, and just say, President, here, so they're aware of it. Then the timing we'll see, because I don't want to cause pandemonium, to your point, over a concept that isn't baked yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I certainly want to talk to whoever ends up winning that design, is to have some checkpoints where we can have those you know, meetings, if you will, with people and say, well, we've gotten this far, give us some feedback, and if we're way off, it, you know, gives us the ability to make some tweaks. So duly noted, we'll try to keep that date in mind as we move forward and see if we can fit something in.
Well, I don't know about Ring yet, but I do know that Minor Hockey, they even have like a semi-annual one in the middle of the season, because I know they had one, I think it was in December.
Yeah,
So maybe even shooting for next December.
oh, for sure,
You
we
know,
should,
something like that, so.
I can definitely commit to next December.
Yeah, you know,
For sure.
so.
Or prior to, obviously, yeah.
And just to follow up, your worship, if I could, and I know, and I'm just throwing this out here, with the trying to get more and more cooperation with the base arena, or Soldiers Arena, I should say, Soldiers Arena. Could be interesting because the manager has announced his retirement coming in the end of May. So I don't know who will be taking over that position. And it could be someone local, could be someone not, I don't know who's gonna be. But that could be, I'm not saying it could make a difference, it might not, it may not. And
Yeah.
Sometimes new blood is
No, could be an opportunity,
could be an opportunity.
you know, what I'll say is I'm trying to work, because we've had, or my understanding's been, we've had some, you know, issues with at the grassroots level, so I'm going up the chain and bringing it back down, so my hope is that moving forward, the grassroots level will see better coordination, but if that didn't happen, I can perhaps bring it to a point where there isn't perhaps a choice. But that being said, I don't want to do that unless I have a real concerted ask from our user groups, in which I know Jackie and her team are going to be trying to ascertain, because what I really hate is that we negotiate something in their favor and then they don't use it, right? So I really need to know they're engaged, that if we did do that for them, that they use it, come hell or high water, somebody's going to use it, so that it can demonstrate good faith. But so yeah, that's good to know. Could be an opportunity there. We'll see.
Mr. Graves, sorry, put his intentions in that.
He's been there a long time.
Okay, any other questions or comments, council? All right. Then we'll move to the monthly departmental reports. Once I find it. All right. First one is the Department of Recreation and Tourism. Any questions or comments or clarification needed, council? New? Okay. Planning and Compliance Department. Any questions or comments? New? Okay. Next is the Oromocto Fire Department. Questions or comments or concerns? Okay. Next is the Department of Finance. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay. Next one is Department of Corporate Services. Questions, comments, or concerns? Next one is the Department of Engineering and Public Works. Any? Okay, oh, Deputy Mayor Nominee.
Thank you, Richard. I just feel like a bit of a broken record. But I do think, I do need to say this, it's about streetlights. And I know it's a very, I'm sure it's as frustrating for you folks as it is for me and for some residents who are living in the dark. I did receive an email, so an explanation, so I've been getting great communication, so there's no issue there, but it was explained to me something about that the batch or source of the solar lights that we had been able to acquire from whatever were not lasting as long as we were hoping. And so bunch of them have to be swapped out or something.
Yeah.
So my question is are we making progress, or at what stage are we at in getting those replacements for those solar lights?
Your worship, we have a meeting with NB Power on Thursday, February 6th, where they're supplying, they've started using them, the solar lights. So they're supplying us with them, and that's where we're gonna be switching them.
So is it at that time that you will get an idea for how long it will take some of those solar lights to be
As
actually
soon as
done?
we receive them, we will be installing them,
Oh,
so our old, so that's why.
That's great.
I got the one fixed today, lost this, but I was like,
Oh.
Yeah, the one that was flashing.
Holy cow.
I came back yesterday and I saw it and I was.
That was a big one, at least every time I go by there.
Yeah, that's great.
It was fixed today by NB Power at 4.
The one that was out on Mackenzie Avenue was the loader knocked it down.
Yeah.
It wasn't our loader, it was not our loader.
Yeah.
I will check them out.
Are those ours or are those maybe ours, you know?
There was the concrete pole, I believe there.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was concrete, I know it's concrete poles.
Yeah, so they are.
And they're all banged together, they're correct,
Yeah.
that's why.
Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah. I'll talk to you.
Just like Christmas lights.
Yeah.
When one goes out, the whole string goes out.
that was good, thank you.
Electricity is very well, and then series, and
Anything else for the first department?
we started worship flooding the tennis court today with a new truck.
Oh, really?
Oh, great.
That's it, we got the new water truck on Friday, and today we started flooding the tennis court.
You had a good day for it,
So we'll be flooding tonight, the shift that goes tonight for tomorrow morning at 4 AM, we'll be flooding. So we'll be flooding all day, hopefully to get ice by the weekend.
Great. There's any intention to do the anniversary party?
Yeah, we will be doing, we'll start with that one.
Oh, wow. Councilor Dodd?
Your worship, this is going back to lighting. At the corner of McDonald and Onondaga Street, there is a base. When the street was paved and that, there was a base put in there, but there's never been a pole put in there. All the workings
Are
in the
you down
guts.
there lately?
No, I haven't.
Because the pole is up,
Oh, is it? When did it go up?
just before Christmas Day, and you are pretty.
Oh, yeah, I went to the grocery store.
That one I confirm, I'll check it on the way home tonight, if not, it's
I'll
my
check it
fault, but
tonight.
I'm pretty sure that was one on the list that Andy Powers come, and they had put the poles up.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for first department? All righty, we'll move down to human resources. Any questions or comments? None? All right, we'll go to the clerk's office. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Thanks. That, I guess, is it. We'll move now down to administration. We'll start with 5A, the third reading by title only of enactment proposed bylaw 522-H. Are you gonna do that, Dennis?
Yes, thank you, your worship. So yes, thank you, your worship, council. In your packages, I submitted a request for decision with the brief report. Also had the PAC report attached to it as well. At the council meeting before Christmas, we held a public hearing here. You may not remember because there were no comments offered. After which the PAC met and approved the variances that were required for setback and parking, and also they unanimously recommended for council to approve the rezoning. We did get one letter come in outside of the typical window. I did get back to that person. It was the owner of the Eaton Works across the street. I did answer their questions, and with their questions answered, they didn't have any objection, but it was outside of the formal period, so didn't make it into your requirements, but we did get one piece of feedback. Staff feels that the residential units proposed in this development as represented need to change the bylaw. are good for the area to provide a bit of activity and it's otherwise quiet. And as well to provide a housing choice that is not typically offered in the town of Oromocto for, I don't want to say young, but single people or people just looking for a more bare bones product. Yes, there is a lot less green space, recreational amenities around this type of residential development than the type that we would normally propose and like to see, but it's all kinds of different strokes for different folks. And this is a way for us to be efficient and respond to challenges in the market. So again, it's been brought forward to PAC. There were no concerns at PAC. And there were no comments or objections at the public hearing. Staff recommend in favor of this amendment, and if there's any questions that Council Pat will entertain.
Councilor Dunn?
Thank you, Bishop. It's just, when I was reading it, I did note that there was X number of parking spots for the number of apartments. If those apartments are all rented and everyone has a car, where are those additional ones going to park?
Can you repeat that?
There isn't a parking space for every apartment,
Yeah,
correct?
so it's one space per unit. So on the plan, what you would see is there would be 39 total units
Right.
within the two buildings. There are 38 stalls on the parking lot that would access off Seneca Street. It's kind of separated there on purpose, so you would not have that confusion. However, there's a closer door to building one where the barrier-free unit would be. So there's one barrier-free residential parking unit that's accessed off of Restigouche. So that's the 39th. And then the commercial spaces that are there, they meet in. There are certain combinations of commercial uses that if they chose to locate there, they may have issues. Like, for example, a medical clinic that sees people every 15 minutes has a different parking demand in the bylaw than a restaurant or a mercantile type operation, depending on the number of seatings. So it'll be up to the business owner to determine the space I have, these are my clients, this is what I have to offer. But in terms of the residential parking, we were comfortable going to one space per unit. But that's slowly where we go.
So the apartments are covered off, it's just the commercial will be tight depending on the activity. That's what you're
Depending on the
saying.
nature of what they bring in there, like they wouldn't have free range to pick any one of these commercial uses down the list, because you may have some that. You put them in combination with each other, you may have conflict in terms of what the bylaw requires, and plus in terms of space to physically make it work. Some of the beauty with these type of arrangements is they kind of cycle a little bit. So for example, your tenants,
Mhm.
if they have guests that come after hours, depending on the type of businesses that locate there, a lot of the parking that's around the business area is vacant around that time.
And
right?
that's where my
That's
question
where
would be.
your guests could park,
Okay,
right? Now, overnight, that kind of stuff, there's all this kind of things, but I've made clear to the applicant as well, it's gonna be on you to have conversations with your tenants in terms of what parking you want. But yes,
because we don't want it to turn into a problem with overnight parking.
No.
Okay, that's great, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I was just going to make the comment that when we talked about this at PAC, that those were some of the similar discussions and concerns that were expressed, but the PAC was very comfortable with the fact that that has been planned out appropriately and that those issues were looked at. I will say that I personally believe that this will be a good addition to that area. I think, you know, there's a variety of different properties along there that you know, have just been constructed for a while now, and having something new, another new construction along that street would be great. At the PAC, also the owner, the people who will be building were also present and were explaining the fact that these units will be, that the target market for what they intend to rent these, they are smaller units, but for that young professional, that person that just wants a place to be able to call their own home and to be able to not do any yard work and stuff and such will be a very good unit to have. It would be significantly less than what other places would be to rent. So I think there's definitely a market for this, and I think it would be a great addition to that area.
I know. Any other questions or comments, council? No. CEO, you're gonna do the third reading or?
We'll, if everybody's in agreement, we'll make sure we do third reading on Thursday.
Does everybody want a buzzy? Perfect, there it is. Now we'll move on to the municipal plan bylaw and review, and that's Dallas again.
Hey, I'm back.
Okay. Let's,
Why was it? Thank you, your worship. Staff, have placed a request for proposals out. Staff, prepared a request for proposals and sent it out, at the end of the, year 24, to local consulting companies, to get, a response to prepare a municipal plan for the town. We received 5 responses from consulting companies, including Dillon, Stantec, Fontaine, and Nethery Planning and Fathom. A group was structured of additional representatives from other departments and myself and the CAO and others to kind of review the submissions. We ranked them based on 1 to 5. On criteria including experience and qualifications, understanding of the project, quality and feasibility of approach, and cost effectiveness. It was a group consensus that the top choice was Fathom Consulting due to a combination of factors, but mainly the approach, the quality of the team, and the knowledge of the project. In terms of cost effectiveness, it was the second lowest bid that we had at 98,000 in base amounts, which is priced on add-ons that we will likely take advantage of to make sure that we get more engagement in newer areas of town. And there was one lower cost bid that did not represent the fullness of the Fathom proposal. As this project is most likely the most significant opportunity that we have to show residents of the newly Ward 4 and others that all the rules and stuff that they're mostly impacted by, that we can take what they say into consideration. This project will be a great project to do that, because there's a lot of those decisions that are in a municipal plan and a zoning bylaw. The approach from Fathom also, part of the reasons why it was so, it stood out amongst the others, is it showed a real knowledge of our town and our situation. In terms of how they proposed to prepare a plan, is one that it was kind of designed, which is more conducive to leader staffs with tighter controls, so that you don't necessarily have as much discretionary things coming back and forth for unnecessary applications or bringing things back. So it would look at going towards, in some areas, more form-based code and more site plan approval processes that limit the need to bring things back for full-on amendments or new bylaws. So in terms of funding, the town had and received funding support from the province to cover a significant portion of the 40,000, because this is in relation to local governance reform. Additionally, we reserved $65,000 of surplus permit revenue from previous years for this project, which covers up most of it. Staff are noting that the cost is approximate to reflect the potential add-ons and the ability to find some additional savings, as Fathom's proposal also enlisted the Trace Consulting, who are doing our recreation master plan. So as we sharpen our pencils, there may be opportunities to find some savings based on synergies to that project. Again, staff feels that Fathom proposed a great proposal. Fiscally, it's responsible. The timeframe that they have is for a July 25. However, that envisioned a kind of December start when they showed us their initial schedule. So we're now in January before we awarded. We have to, kind of recalibrate a few extra months onto that process. But I do expect that should be able to get their stuff done within the calendar year. If there's any questions, I'll.
questions, council, Deputy Mayor?
Just a very high order question. This is not the world in which I exist, so I don't really know any of these companies. Where is this company based?
So Fathom is in Halifax and Trace is in Moncton.
So
They're
locally.
I would consider them local, considering some of them more local, quote unquote locals. When you look at their submissions, some of them include like their project team as they're pulling in a bunch of people who are sitting in Ontario. This was not the case with the ballot.
No, that's great. The only reason why I asked that question is because I wanted to know, I did a quick Google and came up with Miami. So I thought, I'm gonna ask.
But if they have a spot in Miami, they'll get
Council Bonner.
Thank you, worship. Just so I can get through some of the jargon here, this is the final review of all the bylaws, right, that we talked about previously.
This will, so the building and subdivision bylaws were like smaller parts. What I think, we were talking about the Lincoln Rural Plan being replaced, this would be what we replaced the Lincoln Rural Plan.
So have we talked then about the format of the final report, because we had talked at that time about, here's the Oromocto bylaw, well, here's the link, here's the Lincoln Rural Plan, here's the difference, here's the new one.
Sure, so in any type of those documents, like, they're all gonna come out with different proposals, different policies that relate to different areas. In the request for proposal that we put out to the consulting companies, it was that we, didn't just do a nuts and bolts review that updates the language of the Oromocto municipal plan with current legislation. But that enough time had passed that we want some discussion about, are these goals still current? What are the needs? What can they be? And we also said that we have to do extra engagement towards Group 4 to make sure that we got a special request. What does this region need and want? Because so that we can reflect those differences in the document.
And so I went through the rural plan and went and tried to go through our bylaws and stuff. There's going to be about 4 major differences and just want to make sure that that kind of thing gets addressed. Because I mean, if you asked a bunch of people in a meeting, they're gonna wanna know, well, what's the current one say? What's ours say? What's the new one gonna be? What is the difference?
But Councillor, sometimes in that process, if you looked at the current bylaw from just Oromocto and Lincoln and said, what's the difference? How do we account for these differences? Lincoln was probably done 20 years ago and then updated 10 years.
Oh, I understand you're gonna wanna make changes, it may not be either, it'll be a
Right,
totally,
exactly.
totally new thing, but I mean, people should wanna know. Here's the old one, here's 2 old ones, here's the new one, that's what they're gonna want to look at.
Through
Cause how does it? then
Through that
affect us?
process, we will, when we communicate back to the public, we will be upfront with them, here's all the changes that are being made. Based on what you had, what they had, so that they would know, here's what's being changed to us, as opposed to what's just.
And the other one is, I assume we'll have more than one public meeting,
Oh, yes,
at least one in Lincoln, I would hope.
yes, that is, when I mentioned the add-on type of extra costs, that's what we're doing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? So was that warm and fuzzy? It's an odd, okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Alan.
I will go there.
Move to 5C, the purchase of the plow truck. Even best.
Thank you, Worship. So I think council was made aware of the opportunity we had received from one of the plow truck manufacturers to purchase a truck directly that was made for the Toronto Truck Show. So after putting out a tender last year, this year, we weren't able to find a truck because of transmission sizing, because we all use automatic transmission in the town. So Bayview, after calling local dealers, Bayview had purchased a truck from the truck show from one of their dealers in Ontario. And they came to us as first bid because they knew that we had asked for. And the day that the CAO made council aware was because he called me and said, if you're not purchasing it, the city of Fredericton is. So that's why there was a little bit of a rush to make the decision.
Yeah.
So this is basically to replace Unit 230, which is the 2013 Freightliner plow truck. So this truck is currently at applied pressure, putting the Dickey John in and the automatic greaser. It should be ready by the end of the week. The disposal of asset, the Freightliner will be going to Jardine for auction. That's the same thing that we'll be doing for any big piece of equipment. So this is basically to say that the truck was for a purchase price of $376,000 plus tax. Funding was available in the capital account 9013, and we had $500,000 budgeted for that purchase. And the truck met all the spec. They brought us to us first for all the staff to review, look at it. And it has a nice feature, for example, the salt spreader is on both sides. So if you're doing the traffic circle, you can do both sides, or if we're like on Rescue where we have 3 lane houses and Rescue where we have sections of 3 lanes, you can go right down the center and spread to the both lane. So there's some nice features in that truck, so. That's why we made the recommendation to take it from the city.
Warm and fuzzy.
Now we'll do the purchase for the tractor.
So in this year's budget, we had budgeted to replace the 2013 John Deere tractor that's used for growing the fields and any work that we do at the arena for the sports field. So we received 2 quotes, one from Riverside Equipment and one from Bayview Kubota. Both quote includes trade value, so we're trading in the 2013 John Deere. So the lowest quote was received from Riverside Equipment for $43,978.94 plus HSD for the purchase of a Coyote DK 5320. And we currently, the last tractor we bought was a Coyote also, and the last zero turn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
About 6-year warranty on all powertrain and everything. The 2 tractors are comparable and compared to the size and attachments.
warm and fuzzy, council? Yep. Okay,
Thank you, Robert.
thanks, Dave. Now we'll move to 5E, the municipal capital borrowing board application. See here, oh, Peter Wong, sorry.
Standing in for housing. So. I'm here to seek authorization to for town staff to make an application for the MCBB Municipal Capital Borrowing Board. The background on this is it's relating to the water sewer capital projects that we had put in the budget for the 2025 budget. So through the budgeting process, we had identified $11 million of projects that we want to do through the town. Through the early months of 2025, the engineering public works team put together the list of projects that we want to do this year and identify the $5 million of borrowings that we need to do in order to execute those projects. So in page 3 of the RFD is the detail of those projects. So the process on this is that we would require an authorization from council in order to submit the application. To the project.
All right. Warm and fuzzy? It's a given. Thanks, Peter. All right. On that note, I'll ask for a mover for adjournment. Councilor Dodd, seconded. Councilor Henry, questions, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries. Thanks, guys.